Welcome to the August 26, 2020 regular meeting of the Governing Board. We just finished a study session and had a very short break, and so our first item is our roll call. Mrs. Nye.
Barb Monson.
Here.
Laura Bruner.
Here.
David Evans.
Here.
Lindsay Lott.
Here.
Sharon McGee.
Here. Would you all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence afterwards. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Our first item of routine business is to approve the minutes of the August 5th, 2020 regular board meeting. There have been no additions or corrections that I know of, so could I please get a motion to approve the minutes?
Madam President, I move that we approve the minutes of the August 5th, 2020 regular board meeting.
I'll second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes of the August 5th, 2020 regular board meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Our next is to approve for approval and ratification of the payroll and expenditure vouchers. Could I please get a motion?
Madam President, I make a motion to approve and ratify payroll for August 13th, 2020 and current expenditures.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of approving and ratifying payroll for August 13th, 2020 and the current expenditures, please say aye.
Aye.
That motion also carries unanimously. Dr. Castile, it looks like we might have some correspondence this evening.
We do have a letter, Madam President, members of the board, from our Chandler Education Foundation. On their behalf, they are pleased to present the district with $15,000. They partnered with Arizona Community Foundation and Northrop Grumman, and they would like it to be immediately used to assist in the technology needs for our children. Through partnerships like this, the foundation is excited to invest community support and educational opportunities for CUS students. We are eager to work with business and partner nonprofits in support of excellence in education. And this is from Jen Hewitt. And I believe that $15,000 is in your packet today as a donation.
Thank you, Dr. Castile. And I believe we also had another donation last week from...
Yes, the city of Chandler is contributing $250,000 toward our hot spots, and they are in the process of being distributed. And I do have a thank you letter going out to the city on your behalf.
Thank you very much. That's wonderful. Our next item, this week, because we are not having the public actually attend our meetings, but our meetings are being live streamed to the public. We did have a call for citizen comments, and those comments were submitted online. Mr. Terry Locke has consolidated or has sent each board member a copy of all of those comments, and you received them probably this morning. But we're asking this evening for Mr. Locke to summarize those comments for us.
Well, thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Castile. As you mentioned, historically, the governing board, as a courtesy, has provided a citizen comment section of the meetings where members of the audience may address any item not on the agenda. The public fills out a blue form prior to the start of the meeting, and a short time, as much as 3 minutes, are allotted to each speaker depending on the turnout. State statute prohibits the governing board from discussing an item that is not on the agenda, but they listen to concerns and often request staff follow-up on any questions. Get a little closer, Mike. Now, with social distancing, it's not been possible to have a live audience in this opportunity. So in order to make this easier for parents, students, staff, and community, provide input to the governing board during these socially distanced times, We created an electronic version of our blue slips the public fills out to address the board on any manner during unscheduled public appearances. This doesn't preclude them from also emailing you and having dialogue back and forth, which I know you're experiencing as well. But there are some advantages of this temporary format. The public can provide the feedback from the comfort of their own home, for one. A second advantage, we compiled the feedback and provided the board really a night earlier so they could process the information and ask questions to the administration before meeting tonight. So tonight we present the first ever giant electronic blue card representing everyone who submitted. We received responses from 98 people this week. Now, as you might imagine, 90 of them included views on school reopening, or concerns about online learning, that kind of thing. That's not a surprise. It's also not a surprise that opinions vary. We also received feedback on an action item tonight you're going to vote on, Nearpod curriculum, and an information item, tax credits. All the feedback was provided in advance to all the board members for the review. Members of the board, I present to you the first electronic blue card.
Thank you, Mr. Locke. I would like to note that on the Nearpod comment section that we received, that particular item was removed from the agenda for further study, to let the public know on that. And I just wanted to comment that I appreciate all the input that we received and all the work that Mr. Locke put into this, along with some of our, with Jeff LeBenz and some of our tech people, to be able to put this into a format that is readable and is quite informative, and also has been able to categorize the different comments as to what categories they were in. So I do hope that our board members have had a chance to review all of those comments. It was lengthy, but there were some excellent comments in there, and I truly appreciate hearing from everyone. We will now move on to our consent agenda. Dr. Castile.
Madam President, members of the board, we have our monetary gifts in the amount of $44,488.64. Donations in the amount of $4,747.40. Item 3 is an intergovernmental agreement with the Arizona Career and Technical Education Curriculum Consortium for the 2021 school year. This is an agreement for our CTE teacher resources, instructional materials, and professional development. It automatically renews annually. You approved the initial IGA in June of 2013. It was renewed and signed by both CUSD and PEMA in November 2016 and is now due for renewal. The cost of to CUSD associated with program membership, maintenance, ongoing development, and necessary revisions is projected not to exceed $18,500. It has been reviewed by legal counsel as required by law. The Arizona Risk Retention Trust, COVID-19 insurance. COVID-19 insurance options were approved by the Arizona School Risk Retention Trust at their board meeting on August 4th, 2020. The attached quote outlines the endorsement options at a cost of $150,000 for the 2020-21 fiscal years. Deductibles for the district with this endorsement are as follows: a $10,000 per occurrence with signed parent acknowledgement and disclosure, $20,000 per occurrence if no form is signed. Item 5 is participation agreement with Public Consulting Group for Medicaid services. Our Medicaid program has generated approximately $1.9 million annually over the last 3 years. We must utilize a third-party administrator to process claims and issue the reimbursements. Public Consulting Group will continue in FY21 for the Arizona State Medicaid Agency, ACCESS, Medicaid School-Based Claiming Program. ACCESS has total authority in awarding this contract. Therefore, PCG, or the Public Consulting Group, is a sole source vendor. There is no other option. The terms of the agreement shall be effective on and after August 26, 2020. The fees for administering this program are calculated based upon the procedure codes billed by providers and the corresponding units. Fees are deducted from the reimbursement before being dispersed to the district. Current fees paid to them are 33 cents per unit for the DSC portion and 19.5% quarterly for the MAC portion, the Medicaid administration claiming portion. Chandler Unified is paid $112,806.30 in year-to-date fees for the district service claiming portion from July 19th through June 20th. In addition, we have paid the PCG $27,043.87 in fees for the Medicaid administration claims portion from July 18th through July 19th. Assuming an estimate 15% increase to our revenues, an increase of our DSC fees for fall year 21 is $130,000. An estimate of the MAC fees for fall year 20 is $31,100. We're recommending participation with the Public Consulting Group as a third-party administrator. Club CUSD is our extracurricular activities, requesting governing board approval to award contracts to the vendors listed below to provide enrichment activities at various sites on an as-needed basis and as determined by the Director of Community Education for Club CUSD. You can see we have multiple awards because each vendor provides a different program and allows the district the ability to provide a larger selection of activities for parents. Community education will receive 30% for indoor activities and 15% for outdoors of the fee charged by the vendor to cover marketing, the program, online registration, and facilities management. You can see our RFP was solicited through the AZ purchasing. There were 5 responses: Creating IT Foundation, Tech Girls, Imagine Arts Academy, Sarah's Spanish School, Strong Foundation Academy, the Be Kind People Project. ACA is the Sexual Harassment Policy and Regulation. We brought this to you as information. Last meeting, changes are made, this is recommended, and this is the one that wasn't brought as an information item. Thank you, I'm just now remembering. You didn't receive this as a recommendation as an information item because Arizona School Board Association has suggested we bring this to you directly. It has sexual harassment and regulation ACA-R. Changes are made to clarify that sexual harassment in the workplace is being addressed for the purpose of an employee complaint to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. The 7th item is Chandler Schools recommends adopting policy ACA regulations ACA-R. The effective date of the final rule was August 14th. And ASBA is recommending the boards consider adopting this policy at a single meeting as provided by Policy BCG. New policy ACAA, Title IX, Sexual Harassment and Regulation. This, again, the Arizona School Board Association has recommended this new policy, Title IX, Sexual Harassment and Regulation. The Title IX is a federal civil rights law that was passed as part of the Education Amendments in 1972. It mandates that no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Prior to May 6, 2020 rule, Title IX did not refer to sexual harassment. However, the final rule regulations now define sexual harassment and establish detailed procedures for how school districts subject to Title IX must respond to allegations of sexual harassment. The new policy documents are intended to guide districts in the appropriate actions to take per the Title IX regulations in response to any notice of sexual harassment. Chandler School recommends adopting this new policy and regulations as proposed by ASBA in this single meeting format. Finally is the human resources separation and compensation are all listed for your review. Recommend approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Castillo. Could I please get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam President, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve our consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Evans?
Madam President, I am going to say aye, but I did not vote yet because I want to bring attention. If we do we have to vote on an emergency meeting for next week, I guess? If we talked about it at our meeting.
I do not believe we have to vote on that.
Okay, I really want to get a chance to get more information about the Arizona School Risk Retention Trust, and I talked with Mrs. Berry about it. I just think it's really critical that we understand the decisions that the trust has been forced to make to protect our school communities. That includes, I believe, staff, parents, students, and I would like to have a representative from some organization from that group talk to us. Beside her, she's on the board. I know she knows it all, but I just would like to be able to have somebody to yell at rather than somebody we work with to go through what we and basically almost every other district in the state, as well as some of the community college partners, are being tasked with as a result of COVID-19 and liability and protection and risk protection for that. So I'm voting yes, but I just wanted to say that.
Should we ask to have, well, we can either, we can vote yes. This is an agenda item, not necessarily for discussion, but we can ask Mrs. Berry if you would like this evening for her to give you information, or we can schedule it perhaps for a future meeting, maybe at our meeting next week because this is something that is vital for reopening. Maybe we could have a short either presentation or explanation as to why we need it and what the background is on it.
That'd be great.
Are we good for that?
That'd be great. I just want somebody else from outside of the district to do it so that she doesn't feel like I'm just yelling at her when she explains it to me perfectly clearly, but I'm just not happy with the decisions they've been forced to make on behalf of school communities.
Consent agenda has been passed unanimously. Okay. But Mrs. Berry, I assume you'll make arrangements for someone to come talk with us on this. Thank you so much. Great input, Mr. Evans. I appreciate it. Our next item is concerning State Board of Education diploma seals. Mr. Rother.
Yes, Madam President, members of the governing board, this board agenda item is for the approval of participation in the Arizona State Board of Education Diploma Seals program. The Arizona State Board of Education has approved 3 new seals that recognize high school students who achieve proficiency in fine arts, civic literacy, and personal finance. Students are recognized with a seal on their diplomas and a notation on their transcripts. The first 2 seals are administered by the Arizona Department of Education's Office of Social Study Education. The State Seal of Civic Literacy pursuant to ARS 15-259 and the State Seal of Personal Finance, ARS 15-260. The 3rd seal is administered by the Arizona Department of Education's Office of Arts Education, and that's the State Seal of Arts Proficiency pursuant to ARS 15-261. The application process requires documentation that the LEA Governing Board has approved participation in the State Seal of Arts Proficiency Program. We're requesting board approval for the participation in all 3 SEAL programs. Further information can be found in the attached document that you all have, as well as an update on the district's participation in the SEAL of Biliteracy, which began in 2017 and 2018.
Thank you, Mr. Rother. Could I please get a motion so we can go ahead and start talking about this?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to approve participation in the Arizona State Board of Education Diploma SEALS program.
I'll second.
Okay. Do we have any questions for Mr. Rother? Mrs. Brunner?
I was curious about the Seal of Civic Literacy and exactly how that relates to the test that students already have to pass to get their diploma. That was passed a few years ago. I don't even know how long it's been now, 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Oh, geez, it might have been that long.
Yeah.
So this seal, there's some additional requirements for the portfolio, and just one of those is to pass the civics exam, but there is some additional things that students are going to have to do, which is primarily self-driven by the students. Depending on the site, they have coordinators there at the site, and I can only speak for the biliteracy. That we've been doing that for 3 years now, and so the site will determine how they want to get that information out to students. These other 3 seals that are we'll be approving tonight are a little bit more intensive than the seal of biliteracy. The seal of biliteracy is essentially passing a test, and once you've passed that test, you've earned that seal. We had 160 seniors earn that last year, so it's pretty popular. These will require a little bit more coordination, so we have 2 of our academic coaches that are going to head that up. Our academic coach for fine arts, Mrs. Story, and then Mr. Robertson for social studies. So that's essentially how this seal program will work in those additional requirements.
So are there any categories like maybe community service or interviewing an elected official? Or I'm just curious if we have any idea where that would be headed.
Yeah, so the requirements for the portfolio are on there. The specifics of how we can achieve those are what the coaches are going to work with the sites on how to flush out. We're going to focus obviously this year on those seniors that can earn these if they want to, but essentially students can start as early as 9th grade working towards these seals. And I can tell you usually what happens is that the departments that would oversee these seals take a real interest in, it's kind of a point of pride how many students can earn that. And so they'll usually be the ones that push that information out to students.
Thanks.
Mr. Evans?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Mr. Rother, Ms. Brunner just took both of my questions, so I've got to come up with a third one. Well, it's not really a third one, but she talked about, is there a community service component of this? But I was also wondering, I mean, with the personal finance and arts, there's a perception of, there's a performance component to that, like fine arts, performance, but also with financial and personal finance. I mean, create portfolios. I don't know. I don't know how that will work, but just something to think in.
Yep.
But my real question was, you mentioned that the application process requires documentation that the LEA governing board has approved. And what is LEA? I don't know. I understand all those acronyms. What's LEA?
That's our school district. That's us.
Local education.
Local education agency. I'm sorry. Yeah, local education agency. So it requires you. The art seal requires you to approve it. The other 2 actually don't as part of the application, but we wanted to bring all 3 to you, so you could approve all 3.
Local education agency. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Ms. Love?
Sorry, I just had a question about the participation in arts-related extracurricular activity. How is that occurring now with COVID? And I did get a question specifically about dance teams, because dance teams are seen very differently than like cheer and pom, because cheer and pom are under the AIA. So dance teams are not able to, meet right now. So, how does that look, if you have like a dance student who wants the seal of arts proficiency, but they can't participate on their dance team?
Sure. Well, we're going to have a few challenges until we get back to school on some of the seals just in general. I'm hoping that as we flush through what these portfolios look like, because again, the program rolled out last year. We didn't participate in it last year, but the coaches will be able to provide some options for those portfolios. So that even if students couldn't participate in their normal activities, there's alternatives there for them to participate in if they'd like to earn that seal.
Thank you.
Mr. Rother, so when all of this flushes out, a student decides they are going to be doing a capstone project or a written reflection, and who determines whether, is it the coach that determines whether these are adequate to meet the requirements?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so the coaches will be responsible for those rubrics. Again, these are a little bit different than the seal of biliteracy. It was pretty cut and dry. You passed the exam or you didn't. And so the coaches will be responsible for reviewing those rubrics and either reviewing them themselves or helping the sites review those to know if a student earned those seals or not.
And who exactly is making the rubrics? Because obviously the documentation we had here was very general. It didn't say how many service learning hours needed to be or required for the particular seal. It didn't say how long a written reflection needed to be, whether
Sure.
a paragraph was going to be enough or
Sure.
and all this. So who determines those?
That's the Arizona Department of Education. Will determine what the requirements are in those portfolios and how much flexibility we have with that. Once we have your approval, then the coaches will start working on providing that information to the sites and ensuring that our students have all the information they need if they want to pursue one of these seals.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Mrs. Brunner?
Just
sir.
a little one. So this seal goes on the diploma. Will we have something for them at graduation too? You know how we have cords and other things and up the wazoo on people when they're graduating?
So it really depends on how the school wants to do these seals. It really depending on the school, they can either put the decal in the envelope or they can put them on the diploma. Now, if a student earns all 4 of these seals, I'm not really sure how we're going to position those on some of the diplomas. So I think normally schools put them in there as the decal and let them go ahead and put them on whatever they want.
Okay, if there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and vote on this. All those who want to approve the participation in the Arizona State Board of Education Diploma Seals Program, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Our next is 6.02, First Amendment to the IGA between the City of Chandler and Chandler Unified School District, and it is on a road deferral agreement. Mr. Fletcher.
Madam President, members of the board, if you recall when we went to build the new transportation facility, the district has to improve all roadways that are adjacent to their property. Since there was no other commerce around, the City of Chandler and the Chandler Unified School District decided to defer that road work, which you approved in an intergovernmental agreement on April 24th, 2019. Since that time, the City of Chandler has bought the property to the north of ours and is now going to improve the roadways. So basically what we're requesting tonight is approval to enter into this IGA, First Amendment on the IGA to improve Center Point on the east, Carob on the north, and Pine Lake Parkway on the west. The estimated construction cost of this right now is $1,097,300. I say estimate because the city has not fully bid out the project, so we want to get the monies that we estimate will be approved for them to build those roadways. So we're requesting approval of the First Amendment of the IGA between the City of Chandler and the Chandler Unified School District for road improvements surrounding the new transportation facility in an estimated amount of $1,097,300. We recommend your approval.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Could I please get a motion to start discussion on this?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to approve the First Amendment to the IGA between the City of Chandler and Chandler Unified School District for road deferral in the estimated amount of $1,097,300.
I second.
Okay, are there any questions for Mr. Fletcher? Yes, Mrs. McGee.
Sorry, Mr. Fletcher. So the district is bearing the full cost of this?
We are bearing the full cost of the streets that are adjacent to our property, which we would have done when we built the property had the city mandated that.
Thank
We
you.
we are required to improve every half street that's adjacent to our property when we develop property.
Thank you.
Mr. Fletcher, are we going to also have to do this, did we sign an agreement also with, for the new high school?
Yes, we did, for Gilbert Road expansion in front of our property, the traffic signals and the intersection of what is it?
Brooks Farm?
Brooks Farm and
Okay.
Gilbert Road, thank you. Too many Bs.
It's okay. And so we'll have something like this with them also, because they probably won't have this done by the time the school is completed, or?
Have our portion of Gilbert Road done when we open in July of 2021.
Okay, so this is a little bit unusual that we have this deferred road building that we have to do.
Correct.
Okay. And we don't have to do that with Rice Elementary or anything. Everything else is,
Correct. We improved Sailor Way on the west of Rice, and our portion of Ocotillo on the south of Rice.
okay. Are there any other questions for Mr. Fletcher? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote on this. All those in favor of approving the First Amendment to the IGA between the City of Chandler and Chandler Unified School District for the road deferral in the estimated amount of $1,097,300, please say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Okay. I guess I'm doing this one. We need to determine who's going to be a delegate for the Chandler and represent the Chandler Unified School District at ASBA's Delegate Assembly on October 17th, 2020. So I guess, is there anybody who would like to nominate someone?
Madam President, could we ask Mr. Evans, please, to give us a description, because he's done this before, and I believe he's not available to do it this year, but could you tell us what's involved in being a delegate, time commitment? I know this year is going to be virtual, so we know what we're getting ourselves into if we volunteer.
Yeah, and this is going to be really different because of the fact that it is virtual, because you have to be present in the room normally of 100 and, well, there's supposed to be 240 delegates. There's almost never a quorum, which is a problem. There's always a quorum, but there aren't all the delegates from every school district in the state. So you have to be present. They have to do continuous roll call so that they get the accurate numbers for some of the 9 or 10 different items that, political agenda items that Arizona School Board Association wants to push forward to the legislature. But there's a lot of up and down when you're on the delegate floor, because so many districts are really looking at the same policy items that they want to kind of coordinate and tweak them so that, especially since like a rural district's thoughts and concerns aren't left out, but we don't want to have two of the same items necessarily. That, like, one of the big ones a few years ago was that the legislature should lower the graduation age Frank, maybe you can help me with this. The graduation age for a graduating senior down to like 16, as opposed to saying it's 17 or 18, because kids from rural areas want to get done and want to go to work or get out of the rural area maybe. And that's just something that we don't even take into consideration in Maricopa County. Kids are going to graduate when they graduate, but there are other requirements and needs for people on reservation or in rural areas. So it's just a matter of just being able to communicate with each other on the floor and talk and get other people to sign on to something that you want to vote on as a priority. Did that make any sense? I guess that'd be Dr. Gilbert more than Mr. Narducci. So that gives you an idea. So I don't know if you want to talk about, I mean, that's just one thing, and we don't need to get into it now, but that's the kind of thing we would do at the delegate assembly. I don't know how that's going to be done virtually, I guess with chat, through the chat window. So
the representative from our district then presents our slate of agenda or items that we want considered?
usually
Or is that-
not, to be honest. Usually it's presented from the floor, from the legislative group that, there's a legislative committee that will present on behalf of Chandler or on behalf of Tempe Elementary District. And then if we have something to add or defend for it, we'll stand up and do that and take the time to tell our justification for some of those ideas. Perfect example is a lot of our ideas come from Mrs. Berry because we ask every year, what would be important and what could actually get through to really get the legislature to kind of come on to some of the things we want to do or to make them to move. So we ask her, and we give our 9 priorities, and then she usually gives us 3 to focus on, so we don't overwhelm the system and nothing gets done. And then we'll defend that based on what she's told us. So that's the times when I've actually gotten up to speak, was because Mrs. Berry told me what to say.
Yeah.
And told me why it's good for the entire state, not just Chandler.
And Mr. Evans, could you clarify even just a little more? When our next agenda item has a listing of, number 1, it starts with adequately and equitably fund districts to at least the national median per pupil funding. And then it has a number of different sections underneath it that are, well, from the first one, there's 17 different sections. Are each one of those voted on individually?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's and to be honest with you, there's so many people who take on the role of the delegate or the alternate, get in there and don't know what's going on because they haven't read the materials ahead of time. It's like maybe an hour to 2 hours of reading, and then maybe a little bit of research is what it takes, but most people don't take the time to do it, so they get frustrated. This process used to take from 8 a.m. till about 5 or 6 p.m. that evening, and when I was on the board for Arizona School Board Association, we just started getting on people about can you please do your homework? That's why you were voted to your board, and be a good representative for the benefit of us getting work done so that we can move it forward and get it through the legislature. And so it's been better now. We're usually finished, the last 3 or 4 years, we've been finished by 1 or 2 o'clock. And that's just because we've had to wait on, and there's always that one person who, no matter what the item is, they have to be the first one to get up and speak. Remember that kid? Yeah.
But it sounds like it might be possibly a little more efficient this time because of the fact that people don't have to physically get up, walk to the front of the room, and so maybe it'll be so.
It shouldn't be
Okay.
too bad. It should be a couple hours, I would imagine.
So, Mrs. McGee, did you have anything else?
No, I guess I could give it a try. Can we do a mail-in ballot? Vote absentee, perhaps, or something?
So, so you want somebody to move to nominate you as our delegate, is what you're asking.
I can do that. I move to nominate Karen McGee as our delegate to the 2020 Assembly for ASBA.
I'll second it. All those, if there's any discussion, Mrs. McGee, will you accept that nomination?
Yes, thank you.
All those in favor of having Mrs. McGee for a delegate for the ASBA Delegate Assembly on October 17th, 2020, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So our that motion carries unanimously. Mr. Evans?
It is really a good idea to have an alternate, especially since it's virtual. it really is a good idea to have an alternate. If it's not, I didn't see it on the agenda item, as an agenda item. It's really helpful if you need to get up and brush your teeth or something.
I would be willing to be an alternate if that's, I guess, that's actually not on our agenda, but as a voting item, but I guess. Pardon?
I think you've always had enough.
Okay. Does somebody want to nominate me then, I guess?
I nominate Barb Marsden as the alternate for the Delegate Assembly for 2020.
I'll second.
All those in favor of Barb Marsden as the alternate for our Delegate Assembly, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so Mrs. Nye, would you then indicate to Arizona School Boards Association that Mrs. McGee is our primary and I am the alternate for the Delegate Assembly on the 17th of October. Our next is that the governing board will discuss and consider action to approve the Arizona School Boards Association draft of the 2021 political agenda and direct the district's delegate to the Delegate Assembly to represent the board's determined position. The list the Chandler School District submitted to ASBA is attached for review along with the proposed 2021 political agenda. Now, I think we have two different ways that we can do this. If everyone has looked over these, I know that during the Delegate Assembly, Mr. Evans has said that it sounds like the delegates like to pick these things apart. I guess the question is, do we want to vote on them as a whole? Does anybody have one that they, or two or three sections or whatever that they don't want us to vote for? I think it might be a good idea to vote on them in blocks if we can. I think it will save time if everybody is good with some of the blocks. So let's start with the first one, and if you could briefly look over those and determine if any of those ones were ones that you would want to ask our delegate to modify or eliminate and vote against.
So you're probably reading, but let me just give you something that I've always said that this was a snide comment by a legislator, but actually it's been really helpful. Bob Robson, when I first came onto the board in 2004, did not know I was a school board member. He thought I was a student. We were at a Kyrene meeting, and we were the first ones there. And he's like, you know the problem with school board members? Here's the problem. You take this first item, right? There are it's like 5 pages, 6 pages long, and there are 17 parts to it. You say, you come and present that, or you have your lobbyist come and present that to the legislature. By item number 3, we're done. Because it's like, okay, can you decide what you want? This is too many things that we have to try to, that you're coming to us with, when we know you need funding, when we know you need this, this, or this. Give us 3. So this first item is 17 items long. And this will be one of the first things you'll hear in the meeting from one of the board members in Creighton School District, because he does it every year, and I don't understand why they don't, and he gets tons of support, and then we narrow 17 down to 12, which is just ridiculous. It's just too many items. Be ready to focus on the top 4 things on this list, because some things can't be done in one legislative session at all, and it's a waste of time to try to push them when, of course, everything's important, but they just can't get done. And the whole thing is to narrow this down to less than 10 items, really get it down to 4. But which 4 do you choose? So that's, That's where you come in.
Well, and I also think that you make a very, very good point, Mr. Evans, because Arizona School Boards Association has not been they've been somewhat successful in a couple of these, but when they have such a broad group of things to change or try to change in the state, it becomes an almost impossible task. And I thought that a couple of years ago that we had reduced them down into these like 3 or 4 basic items, but then they started putting all these little things underneath them as to what it actually meant and what specific items they would be trying to get approved or get some bills dropped on those.
Can I make
It's
a
just made it more
recommendation?
complex.
Or would it be possible, maybe we could ask our representative to use our list of what we voted for and then find it in the ASBA list and like really push for those 3 or 5 things that we wanted? Right?
Oh, remember I was talking about Mrs. Berry? She's already done it. Okay, so flip over to the second page, top
Right,
priorities
that's what
for
I'm saying.
2020. Revise the school finance formula, provide a stable, dedicated revenue source, ensure the formula addresses the unique financial needs of schools, and provide servicing students in poverty in rural schools, provide adequate ongoing resources, establish financial and academic transparency. So somebody will be like, oh, that's great. And then they'll add 10 more things to it, which are the 10 things that Arizona School Board Association has on the front list anyway. And then it's a matter of saying, well, what's wrong with these 3? And then the fight begins.
So you think that probably, Mrs. Bruner, that we direct the delegate to Mrs. McGee to vote yes on these things and use her best judgment on the others?
Sure, and to try to make it so that we could maybe find a way to make it focused.
on
I don't know if we can. That sounds like, you feel like it's a losing battle, but
Well,
you never know.
But the other piece of it is, we have help from other organizations, and it's like, okay, here's that list. There's 3. Let's talk about the things that Mrs. Berry and the group she's worked with have actually gotten through the legislature, and look at the success rate. And ASB, Arizona School Board Association, hates to hear that. But y'all have been realistic, Joel. You guys have been super successful at getting things accomplished, as opposed to just, pushing paper that you push again next year. So people hate when I say that. Maybe we should send Mrs. Berry.
I don't think they'll let her. So, but I would say that we, I don't know, that we look at, I think Mrs. Bruner has a really good suggestion on the, our particular top priorities, and direct our delegate to vote for those, and then any that come close to that.
Yeah.
Works for me.
So would you make a motion?
I'm not trying to word this. I move that we direct our delegate to focus on our 5 previously submitted on May 6, 2020 top priorities to the ASBA convention.
I second.
All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Do we want to allow her to utilize her discretion on any of the others, or could we get a motion to that effect?
I make a motion that Mrs. McGee can utilize her discretion in voting for any of the other top priorities listed at the ASBA Delegate Assembly.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Sorry, I should have asked for a discussion, but. Okay, let me get back to our agenda. And that is the end of our action items, and we have some information items this evening. One is the PLT4M Physical Education Program, and that is going to be presented by Mr. Rother.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President, members of the governing board. I think that's pronounced platform, so I did a little research on their website. I think that's pronounced platform, so I'm just going to pronounce it as platform. It's quicker than the other. So platform is a physical education program that will be used by all Hamilton High School boys and girls PE classes, including introduction to PE, weight training, yoga fitness, body conditioning, and academies. In addition, the Hamilton High School football program and other athletic programs will use it as well. The program is comprehensive, and it provides several class options that meet the scope and sequence of the district's PE program. The platform curriculum aligns with the current physical education standards. This program provides a virtual online program that easily integrates with Google Classroom and also works with blended and in-person curriculum, allowing students to use technology in class to track and analyze their performance. Hamilton High Schools estimates that around 1,500 students will use the program in the first year, and the total cost for Hamilton High School is approximately $2,975. The program will be on display for 60 days at the Melinda Romero Instructional Resource Center beginning August 27th, 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Rother. Do we have any questions from the board? I just want to emphasize to the listening public that these resources will be at the Melinda Romero Instructional Resource Center for you to look at, and there are forms to comment on it if you have any comments concerning this new curriculum for the district. Yes, Mrs. Brunner.
And I just had a question. So could you discuss very briefly just what the process looks like when, let's say, a teacher finds something that they think will be really helpful? Is there a process where the other high schools have access to see what that high school's doing and if they want to jump on board or not?
Sure. Once a high school decides to adopt a program, it goes through the regular review, then any high school has access to it. And would be able to purchase it on their own. So at this point, it's just Hamilton High School that's requested this, but it's certainly something that if they have success with it, and normally if coaches, something like this, coaches talk and then they want to procure it as well, they can do that.
I just had heard from a few people, not necessarily with this curricula, but with others, that sometimes they kind of find out by accident a couple of years later or whatever. And I don't know if we have a system through which we could maybe communicate that out a little bit more efficiently to the other sites, so that everyone can, especially during these times when everyone's trying to be super creative, what are possibilities?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, something possibly the academic coaches. We do have a PE academic coach, so maybe that's something we could look at as we add some new programs and some technology that maybe not every site is using, that they can share that out in those forums. So we can definitely look at that.
Thank you, Mrs. Brunner. I guess the other question on this, or comment on this, is that I'm sure that we also have teachers that are listening tonight, and they are actually able to go over to the resource center and take a look at this and make comments on it also, I believe. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yep,
Okay.
It's open for public comment.
Or if they are interested in bringing it to their site, they certainly have that opportunity to review it first and then discuss it with their site.
Yes.
Okay. Our next item is, are there any other questions? No? Okay. Our next one is our fourth quarter technology report, and Mr. Fletcher is going to be presenting that.
Madam President, members of the board, for your information, the fourth quarter technology reports, both in the old format and new format, are presented for your information. In addition, we've included the sales from the warehouse because there's a lot of items that are purchased and then distributed out to schools. This is for your information.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. I do know that we had a few board members that had asked for a different format with this technology report, and I guess my question to you is whether this meets your needs. and is giving you the information that you're interested in.
It's easier. It's much easier. I wonder how much more effort it's taking to put it into place. It still doesn't really, I guess I just don't know what I want personally. But I saw that look, Mr. Fletcher. But it definitely
Evans,
helps.
it's hard for us to deliver what you want if you can't tell us what you want.
Especially if you don't know it.
We could do a lot of things, but I don't want to be a mind reader.
I definitely think this is better. It just seems like it's definitely better.
If you would like to come visit with me for 30 minutes to 45 minutes, I'd be happy to sit down and go through with you what it is you think you want, show you what we have, etc.
You know what I need? I never thought of this before. Robbie, your person who works with you, Robbie, she gets me. I'll call her and set a meeting with her and just talk about it, because she knows how to push me in the direction that fits your needs, but also gets kind of.
If that's what you'd like to do, we'd be happy to accommodate
I'll give Robbie a
that.
call.
Mrs. Bruner, how about you?
I definitely appreciate this, and it gives a little more information on each piece and a little bit bigger picture. And then I look forward to seeing this quarter what that looks like, because I know that was, like the layers of how to get this stuff in and what we can get because of the supply chain problems and all that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
I do like seeing the kind of flow out of the warehouse that we're seeing on a quarterly basis like this, to see, we usually purchase a lot of warehouse stock, but what happens to it? And to see this as kind of a good flow for, and what are we really using in the classrooms and what are we using out in the schools? So, thank you. Are there any other?
And like there have been some new administrators brought into the district who have had their offices remodeled, and it's like, oh, now I understand why these things went over here and these things went over here, and that kind of thing is. There's more of a narrative that I'm looking for, but I'll get with Robbie.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Okay, our next is, if there's no other questions, we'll move on to 7.03, revision to policy IHA, and this is basic instructional program. Mr. Rother.
Yep, Madam President, members of the governing board. The Arizona School Boards Association, ASBA, has recommended changes to policy IHA, Basic Instructional Program. House Bill 2625 added ARS 1-319, which specifies that September 25th in each year shall be observed as Sandra Day O'Connor Civic Celebration Day, which is not a legal holiday. ARS 15-203 and A5-701.01 were amended to state that the State Board of Education shall develop a list of recommended resources relating to civics education and align with the academic standards prescribed by the State Board of Education in social studies, and shall establish a process that allows public schools to recommend resources for additions to the list. Additionally, on Sandra Day O'Connor Civic Celebrations Day, each public school in the state shall dedicate the majority of the school day to civics education. Chandler School District recommends adopting this policy as proposed by ASBA. These changes are presented as information. Approval will be requested at the September 9th, 2020 board meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Rother. Are there any questions to this? Mrs. Bruner.
So how, I guess I'm wondering how the rollout happens with this, how things are decided. I really like the intent behind what they did, but I can tell you also I can see hundreds of sets of eyes rolling by teachers of like a mandated curriculum that may or may not fit well into the format that they made it into the majority of a day, right? Versus it being embedded at the time when it makes sense in the curriculum. And so I was just curious like how that's being decided, what staff are being included in the decision-making for that.
Sure. Well, we've already begun to get information from the ADE on some ideas of how to go about celebrating and what a celebration looks like on that day. The instructional coaches will be helping kind of vet those and work with schools on some suggestions. And it'll be school-based, of course, and they'll decide on how they want that day to look. I know at the high school level, one of the things that we've rolled out in terms of civic engagement, which has been very popular in our schools, is participatory budgeting. So on that day, you know, as something that schools could do is that's when they could launch that participatory budgeting. So it seems as though it's very flexible. They've provided resources and suggestions on what we can do, but it'll be up to the sites on what works best for them on that day.
If there's no other questions, we will move on to policy, revision to policy KB, parental involvement in education. Mr. Rother. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's actually-
Dr. Gilbert, I'm sorry. I was on the wrong page.
Oh, y'all are killing me. Madam President, members of the board, for your information, Arizona School Boards Association has recommended changes to policy KB, which is parental involvement in education. Senate Bill 1061 has added section 15-249 to the statute relating to the Department of Education, which states that the Department of Education shall establish and post on its website a statutory handbook of parental rights. Each school district and charter school in the state shall prominently post on a public access portion of its website a link to the statutory handbook of parent rights. Chandler School District recommends adoption of this policy as proposed by ASBA. These changes are presented as information and will be bring back to you on September 9th, 2024 approval.
Thank you, Dr. Gilbert. There we go. And this, just as a question on this, will we have the links to this, or will we actually have the whole handbook available on our site?
It will be a link unless there is a handbook. I haven't seen their handbook, but I've seen the link that goes to the state's website that gives all the different information for parents.
Mm-hmm.
So as of what I can see, it's more of a link than it is a handbook.
Now, these statutes really haven't changed much. It's just that they just want to make it more visible and apparent.
Yes, it's
to
making
the
sure that
public.
parents know what their rights are and making it visible not only on the Department of Ed website, but on the district website, so parents can see exactly where they can go to get information.
Great. Are there any other questions from the board? Okay. Before we go, that's our last information item, and before we go into our superintendent comments, I would like to go ahead and make sure that the public understands that we have not made a decision on any type of hybrid or reopening at this point in time, and that I think some people in the public may be a little bit confused, and that our meeting next week will be the time that we will be having a discussion and a vote on that. I just want to make sure that everyone understands what's going on, and that the board is going to be basically having another meeting, what is an unscheduled meeting with our 7-day advance notice for next Wednesday. The time will be determined based on the presentations that will need to be made and the study session that will need to be made. And I just am publicly saying that that meeting will be, as I say, next week. I believe that is September 3rd. September 2nd, on Wednesday. And that'll be the time that we will be looking at making some decisions for the future. Dr. Castillo.
Madam President, members of the board, I want to take this opportunity to share some really great news and all the gloom and doom we've had to deal with. Forbes, I know you all know who Forbes, a global media company, this week published America's Best Employers by State. We were excited to learn that Chandler Unified School District has been named the 4th best employer in Arizona. How likely employees are to recommend their employer, safety of work environment, competitiveness of compensation, opportunities for advancement were among the criteria used to determine their rankings. I think they also looked at the trend of your West Group surveys over the course of time. So that was surprising. Also fabulous news, congratulations to Heather Anguiano. I know you all know her from Hartford, Sylvia Encinas. We learned yesterday that Heather is the National Association of Elementary School Principals 2020 Class of National Distinguished Principals, representing Arizona. Heather's recognized as a leader for setting high standards for instruction, student achievement, character, and climate for the students, family, and staff in their learning communities. And I know you're all familiar with her. Heather, she is a diamond, so we will wish her congratulations in great fashion, but I wanted you to know.
Thank you, Dr. Castile. Do we have any board member comments? Mrs. McGee.
Thank you, Madam President. There's been a lot of discussion tonight and over the past few weeks and months about what learning should look like during this COVID virus crisis. And I know there have been many ideas presented and a lot of disagreement. But one thing I think we can all agree on is that we are blessed to be in the Chandler School District. We have teachers and technology to offer some form of learning to our students. And when we are able to open our schools for in-person learning, our students will have classrooms to return to, desks to sit at, and textbooks and computers to use. Unlike some of those affected by the devastating wildfires in California and the hurricanes in the South. So tonight, before you go to bed, gather your family together and count your blessings and say a prayer for those affected by those disasters.
Thank you, Mrs. McGee. Ms. Love, do you have anything this evening? Mr. Evans?
Just real briefly, a question, because the story about Principal Heather Anguiano is awesome and amazing and not surprised and well-deserved. But I was also wondering, too, about another teacher at Chandler High School right up the street. Sarah Weifels is in running for National Teacher of the Year.
I thought I mentioned that last time. She's in the top 10 of Teacher of the Year, so
Right.
she's in the final round
Arizona
of selection. So
State.
she's being filmed, and I did send her a letter on your behalf.
Okay, and I knew she said she had her interview coming up, and she was
Yes.
very nervous.
I think
Very excited.
tomorrow morning, or tomorrow-ish, we should find out who the top 5 are. That's what I understand.
It doesn't even matter because she is amazing. So my son told me to tell her best wishes from Bend, Oregon. He had her like 7 or 8 years ago. Still talks about one of his favorite teachers. She sent me a picture of her. I mean, how do you send me a picture of your teacher from 2013? So good luck to her too.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mrs. Bruner, I think you have some notes there.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to a few people as usual. So first, I just want to say thank you to administration for making the impossible possible the last month or two. It's definitely not gone unnoticed by the community. And thank you to all the families in our community who are working so hard to support their children's education. And the last thing I want to say is just to thank all the teachers who are putting in extremely long hours, seeking out all possible options for instruction, and making creative choices and finding ways to connect with students despite all the challenges and barriers. So just thank you to everyone in the community.
Thank you, Mrs. Bruner. I second that. I appreciate all of, I want to thank all of our teachers, our families. This is a difficult time, and it has also divided our community as to what is best for their child. Parents know what is best for their children. I agree with that, and Unfortunately, there are times that sometimes we just can't do everything that everybody wants us to do, especially when the requests can't both be done at the same time. I just want you to know that I am listening to you. I know all the other board members are getting a large number of emails. We appreciate hearing from you and hearing your opinions. I know that it's difficult for all of us to get back with everyone to address every single concern that are in your emails, but we do try, and I know I'm reading every single one of them, and I appreciate you sharing your thoughts and your concerns with me and the rest of the board members. With that, I will say goodnight, and we will see you next week on Wednesday the 2nd. This meeting is adjourned.